The topic of my presentation today, things that I want to share with you, is this. Let me just put my slide on. Okay. There you go. Bridging the reading and writing gap in language learning. Let me first provide a context for this very topic. I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of teachers in many different places, including in Singapore. And whenever I talk about reading, whenever I try to say that reading is very good, reading will help your students in developing their language skills, but there's always some of the teachers who keep on saying, yes, my students have been doing a lot of reading, but their writing ability keeps on lagging behind. What is the problem actually? And that got me thinking. So I put together a book. It's not really a book, it's a book chapter that I put in an ebook format. And the title is exactly the same as the topic of my presentation today, Bridging the Reading Writing Gap in Language Learning. What I did in that chapter is to put together my thoughts, trying to figure out how we can help our students to bridge that gap between reading and writing. So hopefully today's presentation, I will share with you some of the key points that hopefully will help you to start thinking about how we can, further help our students in making the connection between reading and writing more transparent, so that they can make use of whatever they have learned from their reading as a basis for developing their writing skills. So today, these are the three things that I want to share with you. The first one is for me to sort of look at the reading and writing connection more carefully, both in terms of theory and also in terms of practice. What are some of the insights that people have been, or scholars have been telling us about the connection between reading and writing? Is the relationship, direct, straightforward, or is there anything that teachers should come in and then help the students to see the link more clearly? And the second part is a very brief discussion about, things that you already know, basically why writing is so hard for you, for me, and in particular for our students. And then the final part, which is the most important part of my presentation today, is ideas that I will share with you in terms of how we can help the students to bridge the gap between reading and writing. Let me begin the first part, the relationship, the connection between reading and writing. I think we all agree that reading and writing are connected. And some people have suggested actually that they are like two sides of the same coin. But the problem often for our students is that the two sides are not facing each other. The two sides are facing in different directions. Those students very often cannot see the link very clearly between reading and writing. Here are some of the things that we know from our experience and also from research into the nature of reading and writing. Students who can't read, or people who can't read, definitely they can't write. I think that one is very, very clear. You need to learn how to read. You need to be able to read well before you can write. I think that is pretty much established. Jason is nodding his head, agreeing with me. Thank you, Jason. Good writers, Jason, are also good readers, yeah? I think this is pretty much, accepted, that good writers are usually good readers. In fact, good writers spend, maybe one whole year reading before they are able to produce, a big essay or even a novel, a best-selling novel, for example. But the next question is this: are good readers also good writers? I mean, that is the question that I'm addressing today. Now, it looks like the answer is somewhere in between. For some students, yes. They seem to be able to see the link very clearly, and they seem to be able to make use of the reading that they have done as a basis for them to polish their writing. But for many students, that doesn't seem to be the case. So it's not always the case that the students are able, or good readers are able, to translate their reading ability into writing ability. Thank you for nodding your head again, Jason. Now, theoretically, yeah, these are some of the major differences between reading and writing. There may be other, factors that make reading and writing a little bit different in terms of the mental processes that we do. Reading essentially requires predominantly semantic processing. Yes, you need to know a little bit of the grammar, you need to know a little bit of the vocabulary and the sentence structure and things like that. But pretty much what you do is processing for meaning, semantic processing. Writing, on the other hand, is a little bit more challenging because it requires what has been called syntactic processing. The word syntax here refers to discourse on all the wonderful things related to all the conventions and the rules about writing. In writing, we start with some ideas that we have about what we want to write. And then somewhere in our head, we have to translate these ideas into some form of language. Word choice, grammatical structures, rhetorical structures, and things like that. And that makes writing more difficult than reading. So my third question is, which one is harder? Is the rhetorical questions, because the answer is obvious. Writing is harder than reading, as these two pictures, will illustrate. That the left-hand side, the girl is having a great time. I mean, she may be thinking a little bit hard, but by and large, she is doing a good job reading and enjoying what she's reading. The other picture, I think it looks more like a lot of the graduate students in the audience when you start writing your essay, your assignment, your thesis and all that. That's what it feels like. Writing is hard. Let me share with you a very typical profile of many second language students or second language speakers from different parts of the world. I'm sure most of you are familiar with IELTS. Yeah, in IELTS you have 4 different components: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Now this is a typical IELTS profile of many international students that I've seen. Overall, on average, the score is probably 7. Yeah. But the last bar graph actually represents, I think you know the answer, represents writing. Yeah, the last bit usually represents writing, and very often international students don't get accepted because their writing score is below the requirement of the university. Usually most big universities require that you get at least an IELTS score on writing of a 7-ish, 7.5 would be much better. Okay, so I've done the first part, which is looking at the relationship between reading and writing. Yes, the relationship is there, the link is there, but the link is not always straightforward. Yeah, it does not always the case. It's not always the case that students are able to make use of what they have read in building their writing skills. Let's spend just a few minutes looking at this very important question: why writing is difficult. Let me start with the first example. Unlike speech, I know speaking can be difficult as well for many ESL, EFL students, but speech is easier in the sense that the context is always there. The audience is right in front of you, and there is always an opportunity for you to fix any problems that you might have in a face-to-face conversation. That usually is not the case in writing. Writing is very often considered much more context independent. Yeah, the audience is not in front of you to tell you whether your writing is clear, whether your writing is coherent, and things like that. Yeah, another source of difficulty is this: the structure. The organization of especially academic writing tends to be more rigid. It's, there's some flexibility, but you can't really be too creative when you put together a piece of essay, academic essay. Jason, you want to add more? I have 2 here. No? That means writing is easier for you? No, it's not. Text signals. This is another thing that you have to be aware of when you write, because you're writing for a group of audience, usually unknown group of audience, and you need to guide the readers along the way by using all these wonderful text signals, cohesive devices, coherent markers, and things like that. Like first, I want to talk about this. Second, I want to talk about this. And finally, now these are things that you use in order to guide the readers. And that makes the writing task even more challenging. Another one is this. The language that is used in writing, especially formal type of writing, tends to be more formal. And the standard variety of the language is also very often needed. Just giving you an example, the word look at is very commonly used in conversation, in everyday discussion. But in writing, people tend to use a different word, a more formal, a more standard variety, like to examine, to explore, to investigate, and things like that. Now, of course, we know these words, but we don't use this word on a regular basis. And because of that, that adds another cognitive burden to our student writers put up with. Very common in conversation. But in writing, you may want to use a different word like tolerate and things like that. Here are a few more. Yeah. The sentences tend to be longer in writing. In speech, the words, the clauses tend to be very short. Sometimes people speak in phrases and in short clauses and combined together with the word and, but in writing, you can't do that. You need to use the more formal structure of the features of the grammatical system of the language. Academic writing, again, I'm addressing the the kind of things that our graduate students or any ESL students encounter. In academic writing, you have to worry about two things: the content and also the language, the structure, the organization, and things like that. And that becomes really, really difficult. It's not enough for you to just understand the content superficially, but you need to understand so well and to be able to present the content in such a way that it meets the standard academic requirements of the university, of the course, and things like that. And because of that, writing is very, very taxing, very laborious, and very often very, very slow. In particular, when you start writing on something that you are not very familiar with, that will take forever. I remember writing a chapter some years back. The topic was fairly new to me, and I spent months and months before I was able to put together a paper that was fairly decent. Yeah, very slow, very laborious. Possible reasons why writing is so difficult, Robbie? Any thought about this? Lack of knowledge is a multiple choice answer question, Robbie. So it's easy to answer. Lack of knowledge, lack of skill, lack of motivation, lack of practice. Please say the last one, all of the above. All of the above.
I was going to say all of the above.
Yes, there's so many reasons for this. Okay, I'm now moving on to the last section, to the last part of my presentation, how we can help our students to bridge the gap between reading and writing. First off, I'd like to share with you, present to you a very simple model of learning. In this case, this is the known as the apprenticeship model of learning, which is very commonly employed by people in people who are dealing with skills development, or to some extent knowledge development as well. Usually there's an apprentice and there's usually a master. In a school context, the apprentice will be the students and the master will be the teachers, yeah? In a simple way, this is what the model looks like. I think you will enjoy, you will like this model as much as I do. So these are basically the major stages, the major steps that people go through from the starting point as a novice, as an apprentice, all the way to becoming somebody who is very good at what they're doing. From modeling, the initial modeling, seeing how things are done by the expert person, the master, the teacher, until eventually students are able to do it on their own. And they may be in a position to create their own, craft, or in our case, their own essay, their own academic writing, for example. So modeling, imitating, approximating, and eventually creating. Yeah, so pictorially, that is what it looks like. Initially, the apprentice is taking a very small role, seeing and trying to understand how things are done by a coach, by a master, by a teacher, and gradually they take over when they come to the last stage of learning, creating. But it is those first 3 steps that I think should be of interest to us as a language teacher, as somebody who is trying to help our students to become better readers and also better writers. If you're looking for something that is more substantial, now here is one. This is one of my favorite quotes, actually, from this book. This is a very interesting book, very practical. It's not written by second language writing scholars. It's written by somebody who has had a lot of experience of writing, books, writing essays and things like that. And this is what the person says. Robbie, can I ask you to read this for us, please? A very nice quote, yeah? Read it slowly. Writing, Robbie.
Writing is learned by imitation. If anyone asks me how I learned to write, I'd say, number 1, I learned by reading the men and women who were doing the kind of writing I wanted to do. And 2, trying to figure out how they did it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, number 1 basically is modeling, isn't it? You need to see a model and you need to see a lot of model. If I want to be able to write like Jason Lowe, my favorite writer, I will download all his published papers basically. And then that's the first step. The step number 2 is I will look at his writing more carefully, trying to understand the wonderful, wonderful language features that he used to produce wonderful papers, basically. That is the second one. Yeah. And to use the more technical jargon, the first one basically is the input that you need that will serve as a model for you. And you need a lot of model, you need a lot of input. In this case, that's what reading is all about. Yeah. The second bit is what we need to focus more on in our teaching, helping our students to notice features, guiding our students to see, hey, look at this piece of writing, look at the way it is organized, look at the language features that are present in that piece of writing. The technical word for this in the SLA literature is the noticing hypothesis, basically. Yeah, so I'm sharing with you something that you have heard, you have known already, the importance of providing a lot of model, the importance of providing students with a lot of language input, but that alone is not enough because students then will need to be guided, yeah, so that they pay attention, so that they remember, so that they notice the kind of language features that later they will need in order to produce their own original essay. This is the last part. Let me share with you 4 pathways, if you like, to help our students to build the connection between reading and writing more closely together. The first 2 have to do with reading. We need to help our students to read in a certain way. The number 1 is read like a reader. Number 2 is read like a writer, the reading bit. And then the other 2 bits are related to the writing aspect. Write like a reader and write, number 4, like a writer. Let me go through this very, very quickly, one at a time. Read like a reader. Now, these are things that readers usually do. I'm referring, of course, to good readers, avid readers, people who really, really read for comprehension, for enjoyment. And these people usually read on a regular basis. They read a great deal. They also are more inclined to read a wider variety of text types as well. Newspaper articles, academic journals, novels, whatever that comes to mind. And they do spend time, at least 20 to 30 minutes a day, reading regularly over a period of time. Yeah. For how long? For 6 months? For 1 year? The answer is forever. They have to continue reading because reading is good. And this is what research tells us about the benefits of reading. In terms of the linguistic benefits, so you read 100 books, for example, your words will flow like a river. Your ability to use these words also become much, much better. You can call up these words very quickly and use them for speaking and also in particular for writing. Yeah, the other benefits, is that your knowledge of the grammar, your knowledge of the rhetorical structure may also increase a great deal, especially if you pay a little bit more attention to the language features that are present in the reading that you did. The cognitive benefits, yes, your knowledge of the word grows, increases a great deal. Remember, when you write, you also need to, understand the content. You need to have a good grasp of the content. Otherwise, your writing is just very superficial with not much, content in it. And reading also is likely to increase your ability to, make inferences, to hypothesize, to synthesize information, and things like that. And finally, the motivation level of our students may also increase a great deal if and only if they are reading books, novels that they really, really enjoy doing. Yeah. The last bit is also very important. When the motivation is there, then the students are likely to read more. And this cycle will continue. They read more, they learn more, they read more, they learn more, and it continues like that. Just to share with you a quote from this big man. He came to NIE a few years ago, and I enjoyed having a chat with him. Had 3 lunches with him also. It's a wonderful man. And this is what he said about the importance of reading. He's a reading person, basically. Let me read this to you, yeah? When enough reading is done, and the key word here is enough reading is done, all the wonderful grammatical structures, all the wonderful discourse rules for writing will automatically be presented to the writer in sufficient quantity. So this is the starting point. Yeah. Very important. Is this something that is, really happening in real life? Let me share with you an opinion from a teacher. This teacher is from Vietnam. I met her a few years ago in Ho Chi Minh City, and she shared with me something that is very, very interesting. She is a reader. She is a great reader, and she spent a lot of time reading, although English is not her first language, but she did spend a lot of time reading anything that she could get hold of, and English language proficiency, her overall English language competence was right there. In terms of IELTS, it's 8.5, very, very unusual. Yeah, for people, learning English in a country where English is not the first language, where English is not widely used in the country. This is what she says. And I still remember what she says. I think that is very, very interesting. Reading makes reading easier, and reading makes writing also easier. I think what she says reflects to some extent what Stephen Krashen mentions earlier in the quote. So that is the first one. Read like a reader. The key thing to remember is that readers read a great deal. I think that is one important foundation that will have to be there. The second one is what you have seen earlier on. Read like a writer. What does it mean? When you read, you need to sort of pay attention. Now, this is the noticing bit that becomes a little bit more important now. When you read, after you finish reading the first time round, then the second time round, you may want, for the students, they may want to sort of think a little bit, step back a little bit, and try to think about what is the purpose of this piece of writing? Who is the audience? What is the context? And what are some of the language features that the authors use, to say what they said in that piece of writing? Yeah. So knowing this is very important, because later when they start writing, they will also need to pay attention to, hey, who is my audience? What is the purpose of my writing? And what is the context of my writing? And what sort of language features do I need to employ in order to get my meaning across? Yeah. Now here is an example of read like a writer likes. If you read a piece of text called recount, for example, then you may want to pay attention to, you may want to encourage your students to pay attention to the generic structures, the orientation, sequence of events and conclusions, and also the kind of language features, words, verbs, tenses, and other language features that are important. The key thing to remember is that you don't ask your students to pay attention to all these language features at the same time. that is just not possible. Yeah. The key word is the noticing hypothesis. Focus attention to important features in the text. Here's another example for expositions. Yeah. The keyword again is focus noticing. Don't try to teach all these grammatical features at the same time, because that is not the way to go. The students will get way overwhelmed and they won't be able to remember the important language features that are present in a text. Let me just give you another piece of example. How about academic writing? What is the structure of an abstract, for example? Here. Yeah, writing an abstract is easy for me, for Jason, for Robbie Lee, for Ramona. Very easy because we have seen a lot of abstract, yeah? But interestingly, this may not be very easy for even for our PhD students. The reason being they're not used to writing an abstract. But the moment they get to pay attention to, hey, an abstract usually is written in this way, and this is a typical structure of an abstract. And then all of a sudden they begin to be able to make use of this rhetorical knowledge and structure in their own writing of an abstract. There's a website that I want to share with you. It's called Academic Phrase Bank. Very interesting website put together by people from Manchester University. What it does is provide numerous examples of the kind of typical language features that are usually present in academic writing. In an abstract, for example, you get to see things like this. In recent years, there has been an increased interest in recent developments in X have highlighted the need, very common way of beginning or starting the first sentence of an abstract. The last 2 decades have seen a growing trend towards the use of technology, for example, in language learning. And then the next sentence usually is, hey, there's something that has not been done. Currently, there's no data, which is what is less clear is the nature of how technology can improve language learning. Very little is currently known. So these are examples that you can also use as a basis of drawing your students' attention on important typical language features often found in academic text, in a story, in a narrative, in a recount, and things like that. Yeah. Number 3. So those are the first 2 steps. The step number 3 is write like a reader. I hope you don't get confused now. Read like a writer, read like a reader, and now write like a reader. What on earth does it mean? This is also known as readerly writing. Remember, when you write, you want to make sure that you have a very clear idea about the purpose and who you're writing to. That's why you need to turn the table around and try to write as if you are the reader. This is very important. I think in process writing, we know that process writing is important because we want to teach, we want to prepare our students for writing for the real world. That is what writing is all about. Always you write for somebody. That's why the first draft is never accepted. The first draft is really, really horrible. In fact, Ernest Hemingway famously said that the first draft is like, it's a 4-letter word. I'm not going to repeat it here. It's a 4-letter word that begins with S. Very, very bad. The language tends to be not very good yet. Style of writing may not be very wonderful, and the whole text may be not very coherent. Because when you write, the first draft is that you're so busy thinking about what you want to say that your attention is fully on you. Yeah. So when you learn how to write like a reader, then you need to revise, revise, and revise. Revise your first draft, revise your second draft, keep revising. I know there's a lot of graduate students there in the audience. Please tell me how many drafts have you been writing before finally your thesis get accepted. Robbie, your experience when you were working on your PhD? Is that draft number 10 or number 20? Yes, what is clear to you as a writer may not be terribly clear for your examiners, for your reviewers, or for your readers. And because of this, from time to time, I think we need to also give students opportunities, not just to write for the teacher, but to do a piece of writing for the bigger audience, outside the classroom. Okay, the last bit, write like a writer. This one is very easy. I think you will join me in saying that, yes, this is the way to go. What do writers do? They write every day. Do I write every day? Yes, I do. At least one paragraph. I would write something almost every day. Write a variety of texts for different purposes and audience. That's what good writers do. Now, increasingly these days, people are expected to develop a new form of literacy known as transmedia literacy. You need to be able to write a diary, a blog, social media posts, poem, academic papers, and things like that. Yeah, as a teacher, I think we need to keep on, learning new things in line with what is happening really outside the classroom. Transmedia literacy is a big thing now, or multi modal literacies, if you like. It's a good piece of advice from somebody out there from the internet. If you want to become a good writer, write every day, basically. Every single line here has the word write. And that is what I would call extensive writing. In extensive reading, people are expected to write every day. In extensive writing, the same thing. They need to write every day as well. If that happens, then you'll be able to produce your essays in a way that is more accurate, more fluent, with a wider range of language features, and you'll be able to present yourself clearly and with a greater level of coherence as well. And there will come a time after 5 years or 10 years that you will find writing really joyful, writing really enjoyable. 20 years ago, I did not enjoy writing, but now I enjoy writing a bit more. Yeah, because I find writing, writing can be enjoyable as well. Ladies and gentlemen, just a couple of points to conclude my discussion today. Number one, what I've done today is to share with you how we can make the connection between reading and writing more transparent. Remember what I said earlier on? Yes, reading and writing are two sides of the same coin, but these two sides are often looking at different directions. We need to bring these two together so that the students can see, that's what reading is all about. That's how I can make use of reading as a basis, as a stepping stone to developing my writing skills. Point number two, as a teacher, you continue to play a very, very important role to provide an ongoing and guided noticing. Yeah, the key word here is ongoing. It's the never-ending process. Guided noticing of important text features. Finally, I think we need to get the students to do more reading. We need to get the students to do more writing. The theory in a very simple language says something like this. People learn to read by, Robbie, finish the sentence. People learn to read by, someone ready? The clues are given there by reading, yeah? And people learn to write by, come on, Robbie, the last word for you. People learn to write by, say it, yes, writing. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, remember the 4 steps. Read like a reader, read like a writer, write like a reader, and write like a writer. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience. Now, these are resources that are available on my website. Feel free to download these 4 and many other resources, all for you. Thank you so much.